Welcome to Making Your Miles Count Production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scheper.
When is it a good time to start being an independent operator? And the first thing I'll do is personally introduce my co-guests here, or co-hosts, Peter Funk and Dan Scheper, my brother actually. Been driver, how long have you been driving now? Not as long as Peter.
No, almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years? Oh, very
That's
cool.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Yes.
37.
37?
Really?
Woo. 37 for you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, doodle. Yeah. Wow. Okay, first of all, I'll describe I'll define what independent operator is. There's across Canada, you'll have people using the word owner operator, lease operator, maybe independent operator. What is the difference? Well, I define there's two primary differences, or there's two primary business models. There's a lease operator and an owner operator. A lease operator is somebody who gets paid cents per mile, and an owner operator is somebody who gets paid percentage. Now, those two business models are very different. Both of you have both been lease operators, and you've been an owner operator for quite some time.
Yeah.
And now you're just looking into being an owner operator.
Starting next Monday.
Yeah. So what is the difference in terms of business models? It's quite significant, and yet depends a little bit on whether you're numerically either you're numerically challenged or you can do some figuring out, or maybe a little bit has to do with the carrier that you're driving on too, how much information that they provide in there. You've been both.
Yes.
What's your experience as a lease operator versus an owner operator?
Part of a lease operator is it started off, I guess if I look back, I felt less in control of my business. Because
As a lease operator?
As a lease operator.
Oh, okay.
Because my they required so many miles, and that's what I had to do.
You had less choice as to where you were going?
Yeah, no. They just said you're going here and doing this, and you have
It's
to
forced
go.
dispatch.
It's almost a forced dispatch scenario, yeah.
For sure.
And now I try not to be too picky. There's lots of good and bad loads out there, but they know that in the long term, if I don't make really good money, then there's other places to make money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In that way, it feels like I have more control in my business.
Mm-hmm. Feels like it.
It feels like it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perception.
Would you ever go back being a lease operator?
Maybe for retiring, because
Like a scheduled run for
a
maybe
scheduled run. Where you, like right now, I'm tying or chaining or tarping or flatbed stuff. It's physical. I enjoy it. I need that exercise. When that gets too much, it'd be nice to just back up to a van, warehouse, and pin to pin, whatever. Yeah, that would be nice. I don't know whether I want to roll the tires that long.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, a lease operator and owner operator. There's a couple more definitions. We'll get a little bit into, like, there's a big difference between the two. If you're trying to decide whether you want to become an operator or not, you want to go out and you want to buy a truck and you want to put it on a carrier. First of all, you have to decide, in theory, you have to decide whether you're going to be a lease operator or an owner operator. Mm-hmm. And realistically, there's a huge difference in business models, like we're just introducing here, and potentially control, as well as potentially if you're going to survive or not financially. Mm-hmm. There are some contracts, lease operator contracts. I mean, I've for my research in my second book, I've read hundreds of carrier contracts, and they vary significantly. It's almost comical. It's actually quite entertaining when you read sometimes you find out, okay, this guy actually hired a lawyer to do it. Number one, there's one guy says this guy wrote it himself. This guy copied it from that company over there. The wording's identical. And this company over here, there was one, it was totally clear that probably a lawyer did the majority of it. And then they had a whole bunch of, in case this happens, then we do this. In case of that one. So they had a whole bunch of experiences by different operators. And so they said, well, that turned out crappy. We got to put this into our contract. So they just kept adding on. And you can see a little bit of the history of the carrier, how they've been either treating their drivers or how their drivers have been treating them. It's kind of funny. But there's hundreds and hundreds of different contracts. The vast majority of them are written, I would say, I think conservatively, but 80% is the responsibility of the operator themselves. This is what your responsibility is, and anywhere from 10 to 20% has to do what the carrier is going to do. And the contract is written very one-sided, and it sounds terrible, but it's just supply and demand, that they can get away with it because that's the way the industry operates. They are putting a lot of risk out there, U-hauling their freight kind of a thing, but realistically, it's a contract that under most circumstances I would never sign.
But in the bottom, in the end, though, for being a lease operator, the bottom line is basically the same at every company. This one may say they pay more than these guys, but when it comes to the end, then
it is similar in some natures, but not really. In my second book, I did my research in 1996. Okay, and I have these charts. I can show up put up a copy of it, and it shows a good paying company versus the lowest paying company. I only took, I think, 12 or 13 different carrier contracts. The difference between the lowest paying company and the top paying company in 1996 was $1,800 a month, which is $20,000 a year.
correct.
That is huge. Okay, that's your net. Like that's a significant amount of your net take home. But that only says a certain amount of information, because a lot of people would say, well, who's the top paying company? That's what I want to work for. When you really look down into it, the top paying company had over 80% turnover at the company.
Correct.
And whereas in the center, there was one in there that had 10 to 12% turnover. Guys making okay money there, So it's a contract is a piece of paper. And I was halfway through my research when I realized that this piece of paper sometimes means nothing. I had some carrier contracts in there that looked fairly decent, and they were the crookedest, lying, cheatest. It was horrible contract. Nobody got paid that.
Yeah, what they put on paper wasn't actually what they got.
Nothing at all. So in the end, the whole thing, paper or contract or whatever it is, comes down to trust. Do you trust the carrier that you're operating with? Yeah. How do you find out how ethical they are? Do you know the dispatcher? Do you know the company owner? What's the history? Like, how you are basically being financially married to a company that's either going to do you really well or not, or maybe in the middle or something like it. It's very, very subjective. Sometimes two people can go onto the same company. One could do exceptionally well, and the other guy just starved to death.
Yeah.
And so that trust is absolutely intricate to the success or failure.
What I did, I started asking drivers from different companies what they were making, what they were taking home, what they were paying, what's your bottom dollar, and I found that helped me to choose the carrier I wanted to run for. And what do you haul? Like, do you haul all heavy loads, all light loads? What, or is it 50-50? Like, there's so many,
there's lots of variables.
Yeah, so many variables that you look at. But I find that talking to drivers from other carriers, that was very helpful for me.
Yeah, it truly is. And sometimes you have to know the guy you're talking to too. You have to know them intimately. There was one guy who was very, very shy on moving from one carrier to another, but he had to leave because he just wasn't making any money. in there. And so he was talking to this friend that he was talking about for a long time, and finally after 3 or 4 months he said, okay, I'm going to move to the carrier that he is in. This guy sold me on this other carrier. So he packs everything all up and he gets the new decals, and the first day out on the road he meets him at a truck stop, and he says, hey, he says, I took your advice. I'm on that such and such a company. And then he says, that company? What a bunch of thieves. And he went on and on and on. So he was gone from that company already. So, like, I know the science behind moving from one carrier to the other is usually the science is defined by a cup of coffee. Who are you having coffee with? Yeah. Who do you trust? Who do you not trust? And a lot of it is hearsay. A lot of it is here. And that's what is one of the reasons why I wrote my second book. I wanted to do a little bit more of a scientific approach to it and say, okay, well, if you're getting this fuel economy and this is the rates on this carrier, blah, blah. So in 1996, there was $1,800 difference between the lowest paying carrier and the top paying carrier. And I did the research, same research again in 2012. So that would be 16 years later. And the difference between the top and the bottom was now, I think it was $3,200 or $3,400 a month. So that it's not so much that the top paying companies paid that much more as the bottom paying companies, their contracts were horrible, absolutely decimating. And one of the features had to do with fuel. And one carrier had a very acceptable, what I'm going to call a fuel subsidy, and the other basically had nothing or very, very little. From 1996 to about 2000, 2001, the carriers all across North America, they didn't have fuel surcharge or anything to the. It was a non-issue. For 20 years, the fuel cost was always identical. But right in around the 98 to 2002, the fuel started taking off, and it became a major issue. Carriers imploded financially. It was disastrous. 2001 recession was probably one of the worst recessions, in my opinion, the worst recession for the trucking industry. It was decimating. We had fields of trucks in Ontario that were repossessed. It was just ridiculous. It was just awful. It was a terrible time in there. But it still took 10 years before the entire shipping and receiving industry accepted fuel surcharge. And even now, there's still not 100% that everybody is doing the fuel surcharge and what is the fuel surcharge and stuff like this. But I'd like to, before we go any further, I'd like to define the difference between a fuel surcharge and a fuel subsidy. I define it differently, and it's because of the two different industries. A fuel surcharge is something that a carrier or a trucking company negotiates with the shipper receiver. That's a fuel surcharge. A fuel subsidy is something that the carrier negotiates with the lease operator. And they're getting paid cents per mile, and if the fuel goes up a certain amount, then you get a surcharge that is higher than that. And so it's very, very different. There is no assumption that the fuel surcharge matches the fuel subsidy. It doesn't have to. The carrier can negotiate two different prices, and it's their business. It's not our business. Our business, if you're a lease operator, you're looking at a fuel subsidy and how it affects you. What the carrier charges the customer is irrelevant. And a lot of people yell and scream and say, oh, look, they're making a killing at this. They don't. They don't always make a killing at fuel surcharge, because they got, when you are a lease operator, you get paid whether you're going empty or whether you're going not. Well, the carrier is in charge of the liability of all deadhead miles when it comes to working with a lease operator. They have to pay that out of pocket. So there's how they actually calculate the fuel subsidy, and what they have to make it make sense for a lease operator to have a lease operator, and then still make it sense with their customers.
But there's no negotiation with the lease operator with that. I at least haven't experienced that.
Yeah, I agree. There is, if you're a lease operator, you're going on a company, you say, well, this doesn't pay enough.
Yeah, or if you
there's
ask
only
them,
one negotiating,
or if you
just turn around and walk out.
If you ask them what this fuel subsidy is, they won't tell you.
Yeah,
that.
they won't tell you. And really, it's none of our business.
Well,
if you're a lease operator, and if you're an owner operator, that's totally different. We'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
But I mean, from a lease operator perspective, what you have to define what your parameters are, where you're going to be making your revenue and your expenses, and you have to find out if you're going to be able to survive that or not.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to fuel subsidy, there's two major factors in fuel subsidy. Number one is where do they look, or where do they refer to fuel costs? There's actually a number of different places that carriers can look to say, well, what's the fuel cost? Because if it jumped, 50 cents per gallon or something like that, then that means that the fuel subsidy will jump X amount of cents then. Mm-hmm. And so where they look for that is different. And sometimes it's not an absolute pegged thing. So if you have a carrier that says, yes, we give this amount of fuel subsidy, and if it goes up in this, well, what determines whether it goes up or not? Where are you looking? Well, if it's, wherever. Well, if they're not going to give you the answer, or if they don't know why, I mean, it could be too much work for them to figure it out or something like that, but who's in charge of actually looking on a daily or a weekly basis where that number is going to be and pegged at, and make sure that everybody follows that mark? Because there can be a lag. It can go up, and you say, well, okay, we checked it on Friday, but it could go down yet, and so they delay it a week or two. There is so many different ways you can screw a lease operator. There's good 10 solid ways to screw a lease operator. We'll get to the point where there's 100 ways to screw an owner operator. But I mean, I know carriers, for instance, who know what the fuel price when it goes up. They wait for a week or two or a month even, or sometimes I know 2 months, and they wouldn't move it until somebody started screaming and says, we're just dying here with fuel. Oh, okay. Well, then they'll just quickly. Meanwhile, the operators have lost hundreds or thousands of dollars.
Well, the company I drove for, we when the fuel surcharge first started,
subsidy.
Subsidy.
Yeah.
They would put it on our paycheck how much the fuel surcharge was. Mm-hmm. But the last 3 or 4 years, they took it off. They didn't put it on anymore. So we had no idea what they were paying us.
It was just guessing.
Well, you didn't even know.
Yeah.
You're just paying by the mile and just drive.
Yeah. And that's a huge level of trust that you have.
But what we started noticing is that we were taking home less and less and less. We were, for example, we were taking home over $1 a mile. And when they started not showing it, we started dropping up until the end when we left the company in May of this year, 2022, we were taking home about 76 cents a mile. Mm-hmm. So they're hiding it, and so we had no idea. We just noticed, and everybody's saying, "Wait a minute, like, why are we making so much less money?" It didn't matter if your fuel mileage was good. Everybody was complaining.
Yeah. So, and realistically, a company will sometimes do that, and they will do it until they can't do it anymore, and then but they've lost that faith, lost that trust already.
Correct.
The employee says, you know what, you did that before, we're gone.
It's a little bit. Trust is huge.
It is.
The care, you have to trust the carrier.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
I've talked to several drivers and who are unhappy where they are, and I try not to talk numbers too much because it's all very inconsistent. What I mentioned to them is say, if you can get along, if you're happy with the dispatch, if you're happy with when you walk in the office and you can have a good conversation, and you can still pay your bills, it's good to push them a little bit, but that's the best place to go. Because I know of guys who are taking home killer money, and they are always just downright upset at dispatch. And like, where do you draw the line?
I had a client. This was 25 years ago. Okay, and he was making payments on a truck, and this guy was making nothing after his fuel and his. He did some maintenance at the company, but all of his license insurance and all the everything like that, he was somewhere in the vicinity of high 50s to low 60s. That's what he was taking home, and he had to make his truck payments and his maintenance on there.
Wow.
Well, the guy had holes in his shoes, and he was nothing. He was absolutely a pauper. And I said, look, you have to make a move here, and why aren't you leaving this company? He said, oh man, but I get there and they treat me so well. They're so thankful, so everything, you know. Well, they're thankful, yes, but boy, are they ever going to Tahiti on your dime, you know? And he finally, I think it was, he still kept there for quite a few months, almost a year later. Then he moved to another company, and it wasn't even a great company. It was just like a middle of the road company. Guy was raking it in, and he just had no idea what to do with all his money. Maybe that was a good thing to experience but it was a terrible experience. But you have to watch out when you're being a sucker.
There's a time it's okay to have a good dispatcher, but at the end of the day, you want to put some money away.
Yeah,
that's why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, where are they looking for the fuel up and fuel down? Maybe I'll tell you one other thing. I was talking to a recruiter a number of years ago when my second book came out, and he was there at the book launch and that, and he said, I used to work at such and such a company. And he says, I worked there only for 3 months. And I said, really, what happened? He says, the first day they sat down and they showed me all the things that I had to do. And one of the things that I had to do was do the owner-operator settlement statements on a monthly basis or whatever it was. And he says, the first step in doing this is you get the whatever it was, PC miler or whatever the mileage program was, and you multiply that by 0.95. That's the first step in it. Do you know what he did? So he took 5% of all of the miles, and he just eliminated it right off. And then that's what they used. And it was just thievery right off the top.
Well, that's common, though.
Yeah. And so, well, I don't know. Maybe it is. Well,
that's common.
You can set some of those things to some pretty
parameters.
Thing. I did an in-depth study in some of that, and is there thievery in there? Yes, there is, but it's way less than what it used to be because guys are looking at it.
I remember when that PC miler started coming and being a popular thing, and we were just going like, all the guys at work were going like, how does that even make sense? We drive those routes and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And we found out that later on, those were all the shortest routes you could, and you can't take the truck. They're not truck routes.
Yeah. No.
So you're doing truck routing, and now the computers are accommodating for truck routes. Yeah. So it is closer. It's still.
Yeah.
Edmonton isn't as far away anymore.
Yeah.
As it used to be.
We used to work at the same company. Okay. Right. Yeah. And the owner at the time, he's not the owner anymore. He's not there. But he came into the office once and he said, "Guess what? World is getting smaller."
Yeah, it is.
He says, "What?" He says, "Yeah. From Toronto to Winnipeg, it's 40 miles shorter than it was when I was a kid." Yep. Now Google has changed it. Some people are working on straight Google. And so there's 100 different ways to.
But what they did is they changed it from, let's say you're going to Chicago. We used to just mark Chicago. Well,
they can set it in the center.
But no.
Outskirts.
Outskirts. Yeah, they used to, but perimeter. You can set it as center.
But they did it at the perimeter. Right. So then what they did, this is a number of years ago. Now you had to write down. Let's say you're going to Schaumburg. You're not going to Chicago. You're going to Schaumburg, or you're going to Elk Grove. So you write down Elk Grove or whichever municipality you're going to, you write that down. And that works in the U.S., but that didn't work in Canada because Winnipeg, even if you'd mark St. Boniface, they'd still pay you to Winnipeg. So once you get to Headingley, they stop paying you no matter what you do in the city.
Yeah.
So which was better? But before that, man, there was just about every time you're 200 miles short on a trip.
Well, you talked about 40 miles shorter to Toronto, and that reminded me. because we're brothers, this story will
resonate.
Well, you'll remember.
Okay.
You got the numbers thing from our dad.
Oh yeah.
So and when Dad was driving truck, I remember he was just meticulous. Like he would write down the miles for everything. There, back.
He's got invoices from a car he owned 30 years ago.
Yes.
And he's got all of the maintenance invoices still. We've got a pack.
Yeah.
Anyways,
there was one time he had gone to Toronto and done an identical rounder. Him and Mom, they'd gone to Toronto and back, and the mileage was out by 40 miles. And he went over and over and could not figure out what the heck. And then he realized he had gone with old tires and put on new tires.
Are you serious? Wow,
Yep.
that much of a difference.
That much.
oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in our PC miler, figure out what your tires are doing, because
Yeah, where it is, and
You can't just nail it down to an exact number.
Yeah.
Like
And
our
sometimes-
odometers will never match up.
No.
Sometimes
So
if you
it's-
change it from low profile to high profile or vice versa
yeah.
or something like
Yeah,
that, and it's not on your
and now there's
speedometer or your speedometer's out,
yeah.
there's all sorts of
Anyways,
ways to do it.
that was for free there.
No, that's a good point, but it is a very good point actually.
Yeah.
So anyway, so where or when a carrier looks what the fuel cost is and will determine whether it goes up or down in there. But probably an even bigger factor, which you can directly look at, is what is the miles per gallon that's being used to calculate the increase in cost. Okay, now a lot of carriers use 6.5 miles per gallon, like 6 in the summer or 6.5 in winter or something like that. Let's use that as a basis, because there's all different factors. Actually, a recruiter sent me a contract, and actually another factor about the contract is like whatever 2 to 10 pages or something like this, but all the real numbers are in the appendix at the back, and they can change those things at any point in time. So you're just totally vulnerable with it. But anyway, this person, they had a new contract that they were given, and they would like my approval on it. Well, I don't like to approve one way or the other either way, but I took a look at the contract anyway, and I did the calculations, and as the fuel economy, or as the fuel cost went up, in order to keep the thing at parity at the same level, you basically had to get 11.5 miles to the gallon. That's what, and I did the numbers over and over again. I couldn't believe it. And then I said, well, okay, I've called the person back, and I says, how are you doing this? Well, I said, well, my boss just gave it to me, and I wanted to get it okayed. I said, do you know that you have to get 11.5 miles to the gallon in order to keep it up with the costs?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I says, you should probably talk to your boss, because he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, he does.
And I mean, so contracts can be just wildly out, and sometimes they won't show the difference. Actually, I don't know of any contracts that actually shows well, actually, no. There are contracts that'll say, and the formula is 6 and 6.5. But there's a lot that won't show. So you actually have to sit and figure it out as it goes up and down, what exactly it is. So let's answer this question from a lease operator's perspective. When is a good time to start being an independent operator? Let's just say, for instance, you got a truck that is getting 6 miles to the gallon. You got a truck that is getting 8 miles to a gallon, let's say, okay? And fuel costs are just going up. Or maybe you got 6 miles to a gallon in the summertime, or 6 miles to a gallon in the wintertime even, okay? And you get 8 miles to the gallon all year round. Well, your margins are going to go negative in the wintertime. And you're making more margin and cash flow than ever before in the wintertime as the fuel price goes up. So there's you have to consider that in making the judgment call which carrier you're going to go on. So the biggest factor you need to know before you can even answer the question is, what is your truck getting in fuel economy?
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. Yeah. So if you're looking and you've got, okay, well, I'm going to buy this, You got a 1999 Freightliner. Okay. And there's a lot of people who really like that idea, not being on e-logs. But anyway, but you got a 1999 Freightliner. What do you get?
Summertime, I can average U.S. miles to the gallon is about 7.5. And in the wintertime, it can go 6, maybe 5 3/4, depending. It depends
in
a
the
lot
wintertime.
it depends a lot on the load.
That's U.S.?
Yeah, that's U.S. Yeah.
Okay, so you would average somewhere around the 6 1/4.
6 1/4 is probably an overall average.
Overall average. What do you
That's
get?
what,
That's
well,
what you get,
up until now on van. That's what we were getting.
That's what you were getting?
It's up at 7, high 6s.
Okay.
U.S.
The newer trucks, 2019, 20, 21 plus
Yes.
in there, they oftentimes are getting 7.5, 8 miles to gallon.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
Yeah.
9.
Yeah,
Yes,
sometimes.
9,
Some of them are very, very good.
Yep.
And so it will make a difference whether it's a new truck or an old truck.
Yes.
Significantly. Now, a new truck, you may have to pay 180, 200,000 for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it could make half your payment could be on fuel savings.
Yes.
Just on there. So you have to do it's a very customized answer. You can't just say a blanket. No, now the fuel costs are too high. You shouldn't buy a truck. You could very well be that this might be the perfect time to buy a truck.
Yeah.
If you're at the right
I
place at the
remember
right time.
when I bought this truck. I was sat down with you and we were talking about it. I had an old International, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but I was averaging a certain amount of miles to the gallon, and they were claiming this new truck would beat that by at least 1/4 to a half mile to the gallon. And if nothing else changed, like I was making payments, whatever, that 1/4 to half mile gallon was enough to cover the payments on the new machinery. So it was almost a no-brainer. And then the truck ended up doing slightly better. So I hadn't done anything except fuel mileage, and I was ahead.
Yeah.
I had a few dollars.
We talked about this before. There, when technology came in, there was the mechanical engine, and in 1994?
94, yeah.
94 came in with the electrical. You immediately jumped a mile per gallon, or very close to somebody even a mile and a half. Okay, well then when new technology comes in like that, and you gain huge margins like that, obviously the new is much better than the old.
Yes.
And I had a guy who bought a one of the last mechanical, and 6 months later he said, I have to trade it in for a new one because and just take a whatever $10,000 or $20,000 hit and move on.
But there are so many variables with that. When you buy a new truck, like my 96, I bought it was not quite a year old, a 96. I did upwards of 10 miles to the gallon with that truck, consistently at 9. And in summertime, a little bit less, but if I went under 8, that was very, very bad. But that truck did upwards at 2 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
With a
in 1996.
This was a 96.
Wow.
And that truck made me huge money. But it's not like its engine, its differentials, its transmission.
Yeah, you have
its
to spec the whole
tires.
thing. Everything.
Like, just for example,
how you drive.
How you drive. How fast do you want to drive? Like everything, you have to calculate everything into and what you're doing. Like, are you always pulling heavy? Are you pulling light? And with my truck, I tried to find the fuel mileage, the truck that I have now, tried to find it, where is my best fuel mileage? And so I played with that for over a year. And so I went from a regular rubber, just a 22 tall rubber, to 22 low. Okay, so that changes everything. But my fuel mileage went up 3/4 of a mile to the gallon.
Oh, no way.
Just by changing tires. So in 20...
But that would have to do more with your gear ratios, wouldn't it? Or not?
Well,
And
No,
transmission?
it changes your
whole
torque
gear,
spec
the whole-
and
Yeah.
how your
your
engine
whole
has to perform
geometry
to get.
changes.
Could you
Yeah.
get the same result if you would just bring it down on RPM?
No, it didn't. It mattered nothing.
All right. Oh,
Now,
that makes sense. It depends on your speed then, too.
I ran that truck for many years, 10 years with the tires like that. In 2020, I put in new tires again. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring my RPMs down a bit, so I'm going to put the regular 22 tall on again. I took them off in less than a month.
Oh, really?
And I went back to 22. I lost 1.25 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
And so the tire shop said, that's not even possible.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm sorry. So he gave me my the money, what I paid for the tires. He gave me my money back, and we put on true 22, a low prof, and instantly, the first trip, I had 1 mile to the gallon back, instantly.
And you were on scheduled run, so you knew
I was on
exactly,
scheduled
very,
run.
very predictable.
Yeah, we knew everything. Like all our loads were kind of the same weight and stuff. I mean, the wind always makes a difference, but other than that, there's so many things that you gotta think about when you're getting into a truck of your own. It's not just going out and buying a truck. You got to find out everything about it.
You guys are both over 60, so you're my seniors.
You're not over 60.
I am.
Okay,
sir.
So would you?
Yes,
sir. So would you buy a brand new truck?
Never.
Not at over 60.
Not at over 60.
Not
That's a
at
good
over
point.
60.
That's a good point. If you were 25, would you?
No.
Why?
Not at the price they are now. Well, there's there's a lot of factors.
But
because take for example, the company that I worked for this summer, they have a 2019. It has very low mileage, very low kilometers. The guy blew up the engine, and just because of they neglected to look at something. But anyway, that cost that company $65,000 to rebuild that motor. Now, my motor, I can still rebuild my motor for 25. Okay, mine is an 05, so it has the second year of emission.
25 grand. I just remember it. I did 25,000. I remember doing my engine for 10,500.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Okay. All right.
But still, like now the new engines, they will never run the miles that the old ones did, because all the material is lighter. It's not. Everything is so finicky. It all has to work so precisely.
And in Canada, we have 40 below, and you get the huge. You get 40 above in the summer and 40 below in the winter, and it's a horrible place to test new products on anything plastic or I don't know. It's terrible. We should be exempt from most regulatory stuff just because of our environment.
I look at the new motors, and they're coming out with such high spec requirements. It is unbelievable. It's astounding that they can reach those tolerances, and those motors, they run at performance levels that the older motors couldn't get.
No,
we couldn't get that. No. But the tolerances are there, and that's why they're getting the fuel mileage. But I look at it like you can buy an old Model T Ford that still runs, but you go and buy a Ferrari and you can hardly keep the thing running. Like, it'll tear the tires right off of the rims. But to keep that thing running at that is cost prohibitive. Yes.
There comes a point in time when technology becomes more of a hindrance.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm one of the guys that would love to have I like getting good fuel economy, because it's good for me, it's good for the environment, all this.
Sure.
But at what I can't fund all of Canada's environmental
over
problems.
on my desk, I have a great engineering book that I listen to. It's an audio series. Great. I'll put it up on the screen here for people who want to listen to it. But it goes through the history of tolerances, and starting out with a steam engine, or actually starting out with cannons, and shooting cannonballs and stuff like this, all the way up to our engineers have been able to shoot something at the planet, like Pluto, or whether it's a planet or not or whatever, and within 11 inches or something like that, you can hit something within 11 inches of in that distance or whatever. That's how accurate we have. But what happens is accuracy doesn't come into play with humanity. Like, yes, we can engineer something that accurate, but humanity itself, it's too flexible. Things move around with, everything from there's far too many other variables in there that makes that level of accuracy even usable long term or so. And it's a little bit, yes, you can get 8 miles to the gallon on it, but is it going to last long enough, number one, to pay for itself, and then to bring a return on your investment on there? Those are very, very good questions unanswered at this point in time. And I don't think the independent operator industry should be the one testing it to see whether he's going to. You know that I know guys buy brand new trucks, and they're paying $5,000 or more per month in a truck payment, and they're doing it for 8 years. 8 years. Okay. Now,
you can't sustain that.
You can't sustain. Well, first of all, you're going to get into about 2.5, 3 years into there, and you start having to just regular, non-warranty issues or so, and you're gonna hit the wall somewhere around the 3 or 4 year mark, and then you're gonna have to trade it in or do whatever on it. Now, I have a moderate solution for that, and that is you make hyper payments the first few number of years. First, maybe for sure, 1.5 to 2 years. You make excess of high payments, so your principal is down, and then the older the truck gets, the smaller your truck payment.
Right.
So it follows your maintenance truck, and that's but there's no financing company that does that kind of thing.
Mine they did.
Did you go with a bank?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the bank is different though. But a financing company out there or whatever, they're looking at turnover and stuff like that. If you got a $5,000 a month payment for 8 years and on a highly depreciating unit that has maintenance on it, they're going to get into a log jam, a cash flow log jam at some point in time in there. And realistically, the financing companies understand this. And what they say is, you know what, just get a new truck. Your truck is getting old and whatever. And then you refinance and refinance. And you do that, and it's a never plan. Or it is you can't refinance because you're so much underwater that you have to walk away from it, and you have a $20,000, $50,000, $80,000 bill to get yourself out of that problem. So you've just blown away 10 years of your life.
So now you go back to the question, would I buy a new truck? Okay. I have never bought a new truck. The newest my truck was 10 months.
Oh.
It was 10 months old. It was absolutely perfect. All the bugs have been worked out of it. I had nothing but blessings from that truck all the way through. And the guy that I sold it to, never any issues with that truck. Like it was just a phenomenal truck. And I learned something very quickly. That was my second truck. After that, I paid no more than $45,000 for my trucks, because all the bugs have been worked out. So now you can finance them over 2 years, and then they're paid for. Run them for another 2-3 years, sell it, and then do it again.
One of the thesis points in my second book, Choosing a Trucking Company, one of the points in there was, is there money to be made as an independent operator, or should you just stay as a company driver? Okay, and with statistically, they're identical. You don't make any more money as an independent operator as you do a company driver until your truck is paid for. The minute that your cash flow takes off. So the goal is not to be an independent operator. The goal is to have your truck paid for. Once your truck is paid for, then you're getting 80 or 100, 120% return on your investment. And that is huge. That is just that's immense. And the people getting into the industry now, they just see a brand new flashy truck and, oh my goodness, I can own it or whatever, and then the shine on the chrome is going to be off in 2 years or less.
Doesn't take that long.
And now, having said that, there's weird things going on in the industry, especially right now. I had a guy pay $150,000 for a brand new truck in fall of 2019, and in summer of 2022 he sold it for $180,000.
Well,
So he sold it for 30,000 more than
after
what
driving 2
after
years.
driving a year and a half,
Nice.
almost 2 years on it. So he did. He just ran to the bank and it was fabulous.
That's
And I
it.
just
That's-
said, "Go for it. I'll see you in 2-3 years when the truck."
Yeah,
when the truck
yeah.
prices come down,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
See,
But that's a super anomaly, and I don't think we'll ever get involved in that again.
No, part of that was just because of the COVID
Supply
chain
problems,
issues.
yeah.
And I don't see that changing. It may turn around a little bit, but with the new trucks, they're down. When they're down, they're down long. That is the most costly part of it.
Yeah.
I've had some parts issues with my truck, which is a 99. I can usually get them North America within 3 days.
Yeah.
And I know of a guy at work that's he's got a different model than I do, or a different truck than I do, and his usually it's got to do with his emissions issues, and parts are not available. So his truck, I've seen his truck parked in the shop for up to a week. And not knowing when parts come.
A friend of mine in
Like
20...
you can't make $5,000 payments.
No.
Yeah.
No,
And
not when trucks.
I don't see a resolution on the horizon right now. I hope there is for some of these guys, but
A friend of mine saw it in Fargo, North Dakota. He was missing. He blew a sensor on. So it derated him, and they couldn't bypass it. His truck was there for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
5 weeks for
one sensor.
I don't know how much the sensor was, but you can't drive it.
No.
There's a carrier that I know of who bought, I don't know what the amount was, somewhere 80 or 100 trucks or something like that, and they drove them for 6 months, and they packaged them all back up, sent them back to the dealership, because their maintenance was 70% higher than what their other stuff was, and that wasn't too long ago. And they just hired a lawyer and say, you know what, fight this out and just get the best. Now, a carrier who does it in mass like that, over 80 or 100 trucks, can, that's only a few $1,000s per truck for a lawyer. But you can't, if you only have one truck, you can't hire a lawyer.
You can't walk away from a deal like that.
It's
that easily.
It's death.
No.
I've had 2 clients for sure that their number one killer that killed them was the pollution control stuff. And where they were driving along and they bought a brand new truck and they got downtime and this and then the warranty went out, or should say the warranty didn't go out, but the warranty didn't apply to this or that
part,
or this or that or whatever. And the first year they did $40,000 in maintenance on just the pollution control stuff. The next year they did 30, and they said that's it, and they just sold the truck, and then they borrowed money, paid it all out, and they did something else for a living.
I have a friend that works for an engine company, and he said, you have no idea how many grown men sit in my office and cry. This was my last new truck before retirement, and now that money is all gone. Got nothing left.
Under the lease operator scenario, I want to talk a little bit about carrier leases. I know when I first wrote my book, I was actually against carrier leases. I am no longer against carrier leases because the vast majority of them are walkaway leases, where you can drive for however long, and you're not getting the results you are. You just throw the keys on the guy's desk, and you go take in a company truck and you walk away. The only thing you lose is maybe $5,000 from a holdback or something like that that they took over a period of time. And that's the way. If you want to get involved into a business, you want to learn how to do it. I don't. It's the second choice actually, but if the second choice would be a carrier lease where you can walk away at any given time because you don't know what truck you can get 2 trucks coming off the assembly line, one number difference. One gets horrible fuel economy and maintenance, and the other is just a king. Just like it's a random. You just roll the dice. But a walkaway lease is the only thing that really, in my opinion, If you really, you got nothing else to do for 5 years or whatever, test it out.
Well, it was even nicer the
what happens.
company I drove for before to get into a lease truck.
Yeah.
You didn't have put no money down.
Yeah, no money down.
No,
Walk
they give
in.
you the keys. There's a truck.
Yeah.
Drive it, and you're once you're done, just give us the keys back, and away you go.
Yeah.
Or you could buy it out. A lot of the guys bought them out after 3 months. They liked the truck, and so they bought
Like 25 years ago, 22 years ago, when I was working at the same company or whatever, the guys who had those older trucks, like the old leases that the company had, they had a high success rate on those trucks. Because it only was like 18 or 24 months, and your truck was paid for, and so there's low risk value in there. The carrier would work with you if you had some sort of incident or something like that. So you were handheld all the way through. But imagine the same situation with a $180,000 truck. Well, a carrier's not going to hold your hand for 8 years. That's way too long.
I talked to a guy too in the summer of 2020. He bought a brand new Kenworth, $280,000. I asked him, I said, did somebody check your temperature before you signed that paper? I said, you obviously are making a huge amount of money. I mean, he had a good contract, but
that is another thing. We'll get into that right now. So a lease operator is somebody you have to make sure your fuel subsidy is appropriate, and it has to balance out to the truck that you're working. If you have an older truck that only gets 6.5 miles a gallon, you have to figure out whether you want to take on that 8-year responsibility and all the other risk factors in there for the new. It has to make financial sense, and you have to look at the whole picture.
You have to do the numbers. There is I don't know if you've mentioned it, but there was a company that I worked for when the fuel started coming up. Instead of adjusting for the fuel all the time, they took it upon themselves and they gave us a fuel cap. They would only charge us a certain amount, which incentivized the company to manage that end. And still, you don't lose as much, but you don't also make as much. So it takes a little bit of an incentive out of there. So I'm not sure if I'm a fan of it or
there's one problem with that, and I've experienced this a number of years back when fuel cap. There was a fuel subsidy and a fuel cap, and it went back and forth and back and forth. And fuel subsidy right now is winning out because fuel cap, the difficulty with fuel cap is if you have a truck that gets 5 miles to the gallon, where are you going to go? You're going to the one with the fuel cap. Yeah. And you don't care about fuel.
That's right.
Generally, not nearly as much.
No, that's correct.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so carriers will say, okay, your truck, they can download and look at it and say, okay, well, you've been 4 3/4. That's what you get. Sorry, you're not an approved truck,
That's correct.
It makes a humongous difference in there. So there's lots of give and take involved there, and who's accepting risk, but that is a good
And a lot of times the companies that are hiring you on will take that. If they have a fuel cap, they'll ask you what kind of truck you got.
Well, all they have to do is download your ECM.
Yeah.
They know.
They know all that they want, whether you're profitable or not. They know how to do the math. If you're not doing the math, they're doing the math.
For sure. Okay, now let's talk about the other thing. We talked a little bit of lease operator and what situations might be a good time to get into the industry and when it's not, that kind of thing, and what you have to balance out. Now let's talk about the owner operator industry and what we were talking about, a fuel surcharge. Now, in Canada, it is not illegal for a carrier to charge their percentage on your fuel. But from what I understand, in the United States, it's not legal for them to do that. And that's what makes Canada a little bit vulnerable. I have no idea how they would manage that in the States, if it would. I mean, that's a totally different area because not everybody does a fuel surcharge, right? Some invoices are, just $1 figure and the like. So it's a carrier can still go to a guy and say, well, okay, we just want one number. We don't want the whole thing because they want their whole kick out of it, you know. So, I mean, when it comes to fuel surcharge, a lot of carriers are taking their cut out of the fuel charge in Canada for that. A lot of people grumble about it and think it's illegal, think it's this. And there's a lot of information that's legal or illegal in the United States that we think is legal or illegal in Canada and vice versa. A lot of disinformation out there. But in the end, it comes down to, number one, you have to trust your carrier. And number two, both the operator and the carrier must be making money, should be making money. And it can't be one at the cost of the other in there. So realistically, in the end, it's almost a non-issue. But if the fuel ever becomes a huge, absolutely ginormous percentage, it's just going to be that much more of an issue for guys who actually have to pay the fuel. Now, if you're getting 6 miles to a gallon and you do your calculations at your percentage and it's just barely eking out, and they're not, the carrier isn't negotiating a good surcharge to their customers, that's a relationship that you as owner-operators have to have with your carrier and say, listen, somebody's not getting decent enough rates here. Maybe change the lanes, change this, change or something like that, whatever in there. But that is, even to a certain extent, we were talking before, some carriers charge 10%. Some charge 15%. Some charge 20, 25, even 30% to haul their freight. And there's guys making choices, say, well, I'd never work for a carrier that charged 30% on the loads. Well, you have to put it into context. What's your net after charge or after their percentage? What are you taking home? Because there are some types of freight that requires an awful lot more carrier interaction with that freight. And it's not just the driver that's doing it. It's not just here's a load and see you next Thursday kind of a thing. There's lots more interaction, lots more work involved that the carrier has to do, and they've cornered a market, so to speak, and they get really good rates, much more say than the average rates, and so they take 30%. You actually end up with more. That could be, or not. Yeah, there are some that are they only take 10%, but they are the bottom dwelling, and they only get the leftovers that are and you can take way less, and they only take 10% on there. So when it comes to being an owner operator and running percentage, there's a lot of variables. Again, you have to absolutely completely trust the carrier that you're working with, and you have to know where their conflict of interest is, if there is, and like I was saying before, there's one carrier that I know that has an office in a city, and the dispatcher in that city, he personally owns 25 trucks himself, and he has 25 drivers driving it. And so if you're on at that carrier too, who's going to be fed the good freight and who's not? And you have to trust the guy. If you say, look, there's way too much conflict of interest, find another company that you absolutely trust. Because realistically, this is a long-term approach. You're married to these carriers, and sometimes you just go down or go up with them in there. There was let's talk a little bit about February to May 2022, the most bizarre time frame that I've ever seen in the industry, and I've been in the industry for 30 years and have some, maybe 2001 was a negative aspect of it, but between February and May of 2022, the rates were just through the roof. Like, they were just absolutely bizarre. And carriers were making unbelievable amount of money. And there were guys and owner-operators making obscene amounts of money. A lot of money in there. And then we had guys on at a percentage making no different than they've ever made before, making the same amount of money. The average carrier, not all of them, of course, but the average carrier, trucking company, also have a separate load brokering company.
Yes.
So let's say you get an obscene rate of, well, I heard of one once where somebody was getting $16 a mile. Okay, that was what he was getting. Like, can't confirm or deny it, but that's right. He was getting $16 a mile. And if he had somebody on a percentage rate, okay, or he had the opportunity of either giving it to somebody on percentage or his own carrier, or his own truck, or somebody who was a lease operator, well, he's obviously going to, funnel them to the other ones, right? And not the guys. So the big, and that's human nature. And I don't think that is something that, we should, haul out a whip and chair and fight over, because realistically, if we owned the carrier, you know what? We would do the same thing too, probably under most circumstances.
That kind of brings up a little bit of a topic that came up at the office where I work now, and I thought it was really clear and interesting all at the same time. There was another owner operator that come in and said he approached the boss and said, I don't think this is right. You're playing favorites with some of these other drivers that have been here for a long time. And the boss turned around and says, you're absolutely right, I am. He said, I've got my guys that I look out for. You're new, you're whatever, you can work your way up. And just right straight. And at first I was taken back, and I realized, you know what, that's probably the best statement he could have made, because
absolutely.
Look, everyone's out there to work to make their money, and at least he's being honest. There's other places that would just swear up and down, no, that's not where well, the paperwork shows it. Sorry, the numbers on the paper don't lie.
And you have to do something like that, though, too.
Absolutely.
Because you want to keep the boys, but you also want to keep the customers, too.
Absolutely.
So you have to be upfront with the customers, and you have to, you have to kiss their butts, and you have to kiss the other. And if a newbie, you have to work your way in. You have to make a niche for yourself.
Prove yourself.
Prove yourself. And you have to, and it takes years sometimes to prove yourself. You don't just get that overnight.
And there are some drivers that are not willing to do that level of commitment or service.
Right.
And why should they be paid for someone else who's willing to go over and above?
And not just that, but drivers being inconsistent.
Yes.
Like the dispatcher never knows what you want. Like for years, there's drivers like that at the company I drove for before. These guys do this all the time for years. They can never count on that driver because
one day he's screaming, I can make it there in 10 hours, no problem. And then the next day it's 3 days till he gets there.
Or he wants miles. I need miles. Then they give him miles, and he said, well, why are you going to, I don't want to work that hard.
That's like,
that goes a long way. And I told, I'm just hiring on now to another company. And I told him, I said, there's one thing that you're going to learn very quickly, that my wife and I are very consistent. I said, we're gonna find a lane that we like, and that's where we're gonna run. And we will just be there. But I said, you want us to do you a favor? No problem. No problem. We will do what needs to get done.
But not fill your life with favors.
No.
There's a give and take. There's a give and take. And there's solid respect. There are some companies, and we're together I've actually worked at the same company. I actually drove your truck for a number of years.
Yes.
Way back when. But I mean, there are some people that say, okay, this is a high pressure sensitive, we're going to get our butt kicked if it's not there on time. And so it's over here, and they call the special guy in, who's going to get anything done no matter what kind of a thing. There are some guys like that, and they have to know who and when and how to use those
and
kind
they
of
can
things.
count on you.
Yeah. They but there's some people, I mean, especially a newbie, you don't know, whether it takes 3 months just to learn whether the person's habits and sometimes you sometimes well the guy says there's 3 weekends in a row now his truck needs work. Or 6 weeks in a row that his truck needs work on the weekends or something like that, and there's something not jiving, and you gotta find that out, and it's a wild west sometimes.
Another thing that I'm kind of proud of as far as my truck goes. I've been on this company where I am now for almost 7 years, and out of the 7 years, I think there's only been 2 trips where my truck has been down on the road for maintenance. Otherwise, I'll take an extra day at home, but a load has never been late. I've never pulled a load late that my truck has let me down, except for twice. There was twice, and those technically were preventable, but the thing is, driving the newer trucks, you can be flying down the highway and it'll turn off like that.
You can get killed by sensors.
I don't know how many trucks I've passed that they look fine, they're just pulled off, and they'll sit on the side of the road a day and a half. Like,
well, our company that I drove for, if they had a hot load that absolutely had to be there, they'd never hire a new truck.
Oh yeah,
no.
It was always one of the older ones.
Yeah,
it's a weird where the entire industry is going. Like I said, highly machined, highly tuned. You can get some more productivity out of it.
Yeah.
But productivity, like from a fuel economy and some maintenance issues, like they went from standard to automatic, and it wasn't because an automatic gives better fuel economy.
It does.
It does?
It does.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, maybe not initially. I don't know.
I know lots of guys that have automatics, and there's one of my friends has got a stick.
Okay.
And that guy with the stick cannot get the fuel mileage those guys can with the automatics.
Is that right?
Is it because of the tranny? Is that the only thing different?
It's just how the computer shifts the truck.
Oh. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
You
corrected.
cannot be that precise. It used to not. Like in the old, when the automatics first started,
I remember when
I took a truck for a drive, and I took my daughter along, and my daughter knows how I drive, and we took this truck for a drive, and we were not 2 blocks from the place where I picked it up, take it for a drive. She said, "Dad, bring the truck back." Yeah. I said, "Why?" She says, "It doesn't shift nearly as nice as you do."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So in the beginning,
it used to be like wham, 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 wham.
Oh yeah, 2100 RPM. That stupid thing would shift. But this is a topic we could talk about days about.
Yeah.
Because there is a million things that you need to know, wanting to buy a truck.
Yeah.
That we didn't have to ask those questions back when we started.
That's true.
That's true.
But you have to ask those now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of companies too that they will not hire anything older than 4 years.
Yeah.
Like I did every year. I would rebuild a truck and I'd sell it, make some money, and then all of a sudden they said you can't do that anymore. You can't buy anything older than what was it? I think 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't want to buy that kind of truck. Nobody will buy it.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
They want up to 07, the end of 07, and
then basically from what? Basically 2008 to 2017, 18, somewhere in there. That's when all of, it became unpredictable.
Well, especially the 2 years, like 08, 09, till 10, till the end of 10, when the DEF systems came in. Then they really improved.
Yeah.
And now again for 2022, I've done a little bit of research into engines, and they've eliminated a lot of sensors.
Oh, good.
So they've eliminated almost half the sensors.
Oh, wow.
So that does make it better.
yeah.
So, but how are they going to fare?
Yeah.
Maybe
Long
we'll
term.
see.
Long term
Yeah,
is
remains to be seen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My issue about that is that's great, but you need to have that proven over 5 years.
Correct.
Because that's a minimum how long your financing is, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you're just going to Las Vegas.
Mhm.
You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
It's just a gamble.
But this is exactly what we're doing. I was at Truck World a few years back, and we are handing out CDs, and I just asked the one question: do you have pre-emission trucks? And of all the independent operators, both lease and owner operators had, 70% of them said they do not have pre-emission, or they do not have emission-controlled trucks. They were all pre-emission trucks, or 70% of them were.
Mhm.
Or not anymore. Maybe that's another thing they said.
Yeah.
But realistically, the lease operator or the independent operator industry did not want to be the test pilot. The people who put the guinea pig, the financial guinea pig on the future, and they don't want to put their future in the line for some untrained technology. And I totally agree. I thought that was very collectively wise of the entire industry to do that. Let the trucking companies, send back 100 trucks and hire a lawyer.
But even so, like you look at the big trucking companies down south, two in specific, JB Hunt and Schneider, they had over 5,000 to 7,500 trucks. And when the emissions started to come, where did they all go? They put everything on the rail because they could not afford to keep these trucks running.
I think Canada has, whether it's emissions or I know I was talking to a tow truck driver in Saskatchewan, and I can't remember why I was even talking to him, but he said, I used to haul a bunch of old trucks. He says, but now I just haul new trucks. He says 90% of everything that he tows on the road is all brand new trucks, and it had to do with DEF because DEF would freeze and stuff like this. Our country is not made for the majority of the new technology that's going into some of these trucks. Our country should, same thing with biodiesel. Canada should have flat out, and this is one thing that I totally agree with the Canadian Trucking Alliance on, because they agree it too. Canada should not be having to do anything with the biodiesel.
No,
because it's the what do you call it, that mold or that comes from the biodiesel and or whatever, and it grows like crazy in the cold.
algae
or what? Yeah, whatever it is.
It grows in your tanks.
Yeah. I've had guys had to flush out their entire system twice in 2 months.
I had a guy, he had to cut the back of the tank open, go inside there and scrape it all out. It was literally 3 to 4 inches tall.
Oh, goodness sakes. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it is environmentally produced because we have a cold climate here, for Pete's sake. I mean, in the United States, sure, have at it. Well, maybe North Dakota, maybe not.
The southern states.
Yeah, the southern states, sure, have those laws there. But Canada should be absolutely exempt. I'm used to writing it. I'm not used to saying it.
It should be like we're a different country or something.
Yes, it should be.
Now that you're talking about that, they want to bring in electric trucks. There was a story last week of a guy in Edmonton. He had a Tesla car, and his battery ran low. So he went home to charge it up, and he didn't have a garage. So it just said battery too cold, must warm battery. And so he took it to a charging station where they have the government charging station. He plugged it in, and it says must warm up battery. And he had to leave the car there, get a ride home, and get that car towed to a shop where it could warm the battery so he could continue driving. Like, you're talking about biodiesel and all that. Yeah. Our country is just not made for this.
No. I think there's a place for electric trucks in the cities. Absolutely. Like in certain areas and certain lanes and loops or whatever in the cities, that's fabulous. Autonomy.
But they would have to be parked in warm shops overnight.
Oh, totally.
They can't be parked outside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe even half a day go out and they come back, because sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
go to Edmonton, you get a 40 below winter. I mean, how long does those things have?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't care how many blankets you put around there. There comes a point in time where you can't do much,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then what happens when you get into a snowstorm? I mean, and you're sitting in a, you know, in an expressway, and it's a parking lot with a whole bunch of, because there's an accident or something like that. How are you going to keep warm? You know, I mean, hey, you're watching the needle go down. We have also not just cold. It's a huge country. We have like over 3,000 miles from coast to coast. Oh, there's no way an electric is going to serve that level. And never mind we could possibly do it because of our power grid, because we have a lot of dams and stuff like that. But so that's, but not the United States. Like, anyway, boy, we're off topic. So anyway, when is a good time to start being an independent operator? Has to do with how much are you paying for a truck? When are you debt free with it? When is the truck paid for? What is the carrier contract if you're going to be a lease operator? And what the carrier contract is, when and where do they check the fuel cost? And also, what is the on the formula for the fuel subsidy? What miles per gallon do you need to get in order to do well there? Those are the real questions on there. And if the truck that you're looking for is doesn't get the fuel economy, or maybe your payment is too high or something like that, you have to make sure that everything lines up. Then you can actually do exceptionally well, or you could be now's not the time to do it. So there's a few things in there.
But what I did is about 2 or 3 years before I bought my first truck, I was driving a company truck, and I kept track of the miles, I kept track of the fuel, and so what does it cost to operate this vehicle per mile?
Yes.
And so I had all of that by the time I bought my first truck.
I would nominate you for owner operator of the year, because you know that owner operators and they did a section on this, I think, over a number of years. I think it was either Truck News or Today's Trucking, or some magazine did it, and they said 3 or 4 out of 10 of the owner operators of the year, that's exactly what they did. They drove a truck for 3-4 years, and they did all of the math with the fuel economy, the maintenance, and stuff like this. And then they said, okay, I'll take this truck, or I know what I'm doing then. They made sure before they stepped out on something. But too often you have guys saying, you know what, I want a new truck, and which carrier should I put it on to? Oh, that one's got a neat logo, you know? And they don't do much of a research of anything. Well, that guy looks like he's doing okay, and so there's no research at all on it. And in Canada, 2 out of 10 independent operators that start within the first year will not be able to make a payment, one of their payments. 2 out of 10. That's 20%. Coincidentally, what is it? I think it's in the United States. It's either 3 or 4 out of 10. So they have much higher failure rate in the United States than they do in Canada. So there's a lot of things going on out there.
Let me throw a shameless plug here.
Shameless plug.
When I got into driving truck, very green. I hadn't driven truck until I got my license, and Rob actually encouraged me, get into trucking. Try this. And
Still hate him for it, right?
Yeah. I hold.
Still what?
Still hate him for it.
I can blame me for everything.
Yeah.
And getting into my first truck, I had no experience. I didn't know what to do. I was less. He was the you were an accountant already at that point, and you were doing trucking accounting.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I'll do this. We knew of a company that was hiring, so I said, okay, if I go there, you knew of some guys working there making good money, and all I said is, every month I'd phone Rob and say, am I making money? He says, yeah, keep going. So I turned around and did what I knew I had to do. And the first 5-10 years were very profitable.
Yeah.
And partly because I just kept my nose out of the accountant and gave it to someone who knew what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
But which just shows you really need to know your numbers. It's important,
But
and also work hard.
Yeah.
Like those two absolutely have to go together.
But today, if you even going from a company truck, I would never recommend somebody buying a brand new truck.
No, not
To start.
Not to start.
You're in too deep.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong,
What about a company walk-away lease with a brand new truck?
that's
Would you make that exception?
not $5,000 a month.
No.
If your payments have to be over 3,500, I would never step into a truck.
No.
Never. And that has to only be for 3 years.
Yeah.
Maximum, I would even go 4. Because
So
you
what
can,
is
you
the
can always,
okay in your scenario then? What is the future of independent operators? How do they get into the industry?
it's going to be very difficult because you have to have so much money down. And
Or you have to luck out in buying. I know a guy, and I was talking to this
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he found 2 old trucks on some farmyard something, and he paid, on average, I think he paid $5,000 each for them. One, he paid an extra $10,000 to get it safetied, and the other one he parked for a little bit, waiting for more cash, and he went out, so with basically about $20,000 in, he's got a fairly decent truck, and he ran it for about 6 or 8 months, and he had enough money to get the other truck on the road, and that's how he got it. But he totally lucked out on $5,000 each truck. All he needed was one, maybe.
Yeah.
But so you have to be at the right place at the right time to get a smoking good deal.
yeah.
In order to do that.
A friend of mine just bought a truck. He didn't have enough money down. So he took his boss to go and look at the truck, and that truck was just in immaculate shape. It was an older truck. I think it was a 2003. And his boss bought it for him. He gave him his down payment, and so he had some money down, and now he's just paying his boss. But he doesn't even have to pay interest to his boss.
Oh,
So he's just buying the truck outright for what they paid for it.
sure.
So he got a heck of a deal.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he right away he's on with the company.
Yeah.
Well, he was on with the company before, but
He's married with him. He's married to
yeah,
them.
and
That
now
sounds like an honest guy. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
but
looks
and,
like
and
it
maybe
anyway.
his boss thought too. You know what? If I do this for him, I've got him.
You got you
I've
you
got it
got him,
before
and
you.
also you got a nice truck too.
Correct.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if he walks away from it, you know.
Correct.
You know.
Yeah.
That's it's a no risk venture for both
Yep.
sides.
If you are with a company that which I came from, where they were leasing 2004, 13, 14, 15, for very inexpensive. I think it was like $1,800 a month, and so you buy a truck like that, and I think they were selling for 45 to 50, something like that. So the price wasn't outrageous. So these, like I said before, so some of these guys drove them for 3 to 6 months, liked the way the truck operated, little maintenance, fuel mileage is good, set up right. So then they bought them out.
Yeah.
And now that's a very nice step to get into
That
if
is-
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that there I wouldn't hesitate, but to go out and buy a new truck, I would never recommend.
It's too
anybody.
long. I remember when truck financing went from 4 to 5 years, and I'm going, 5 years, my goodness.
yeah.
And then just the other day, I just heard a guy doing 8 years, $5,000. I thought
For $5,000 a month for 8 years.
for 8 years. I just like baffled.
Like, how do you do that? Like, Dan, could you make it work?
No.
Not at your age.
No. Not at my age.
No. Not talking about age at all. Dan, you're still young. You're still young.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
good. You're good.
No,
But even so, like, I look at me and my wife driving. She drives with me all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we could make it work.
Yeah.
But do you want that pressure?
Yeah. No, that
Yeah.
see, even if you take on that personal pressure, that's part of the initial thing you've got to do the math with. And then for you had a pretty good option. You're fairly mechanical. You like playing and doing a lot of your maintenance. I do a tenth of what you do. Most of my maintenance is in the shop. And I've developed a good relationship with those guys. I put it in there. They take care of it exactly how they know I like it.
Yeah.
They get paid for it, but when I'm home, I have home time.
Yeah.
I don't have wrench time. I really segregated the two that way.
So I have my shop at home.
Yeah.
So I'm at the house.
Yeah.
So the wife just hollers and away we go for lunch or whatever it needs, or come in for coffee. But that is so nice.
There's another aspect very interesting here that I realize. You're a single driver, not you're married, but I mean you're one driver, and you're husband and wife.
Yeah.
Okay. When push comes to shove, you have lower risk because because you can only do so many miles in a day, and you can do almost twice as many. So if you're put into a situation, you can't recuperate nearly as fast from a down month, for instance,
That's
as
correct.
it takes you half a month to recuperate from one bad month. So maybe what would you recommend a husband and wife team? Would they get into a brand new truck?
Not right away. Not the first truck. Not the first truck. Buy one for $50,000, pay it off. And
what if they have zero mechanical?
Okay, well,
I'm trying to convince you.
I know, not for $180,000. No, I just wouldn't do it. Like, you're buying a house.
But not even a house. You have an asset, even if you don't pay it off. You can sell it and get $180,000.
I know, but the value of it, like the price of it, is like
you drive the truck off the lot, and you can still only get 170 or
saying,
160.
Where does he live with a $180,000 truck?
Yeah,
Toronto. I mean, that's not even a garage.
Yeah, you know, I know a couple.
But anyway,
when she got on, he had a truck that he was driving. Then she jumped in. Very much like what my wife did. She jumped in, and then they drove for 2 years. Then they bought a new one. So if your wife is planning on coming along with you, now first of all, think about that very, very, very much, because me and my wife have always gotten along very well. We had a very good marriage until we started driving together.
Oh, really?
That first year was hell on earth.
Oh, yeah.
There was times where she wanted to jump out at 55 mile an hour, and or vice versa, and
or push you out.
that went on for almost a year.
Yeah,
and not all the time. Okay, not all the time, but because we ran team, now you're running day and night. You're running day and night, so you're sleep deprived. And as soon as you get sleep deprived, you start getting irritated and ornery, and then somebody says something and rah.
I don't remember. My wife and I drove, team, and we were on at a company that and we had a truck back then, geared up way up high, and we could easily cruise at 85 miles an hour. Okay, and we would oftentimes do that. This is way back when, but in the 90s. Okay, so we're speeding like crazy, and we never got at that company. We never got more than 14,000 miles, because we'd run like crazy, and then we were down for a day, and then run, and then down, and then run, and then down. So it was. We never really. We always had a night together, and everything was fine. And it's like super single, but not really. Then we got onto the company actually you were on, and first of all, our speed, we had to gear the sucker way down, because we had to go way
2 years down.
2 years down, and so we're putt, and we're feeling like everyone's passing us, but well dispatched. And we were, like 18,000 is way easier than 14 if you're running team. And we had regular months, 22,000 or more. Our record, I think, was 27,500 or something like that. Well, you're gone all the time, just going. And there comes a point in time where you're right. The fatigue is there. Yeah. The loneliness is there. The going to horrendous showers that have bugs crawling in the wall. I mean, you get all these experiences together, and you have to survive through them all, Yeah. And
we only ran team for about 2.5 years, and then I pulled the plug. Yeah. And I said, you know what? We'll run 300 extra miles a day. Yeah. That's it.
And that's you had a lifestyle of it.
I won't run through the night. So we found out, like, Kathy would drive more at night. She liked that better than during the day.
Yeah.
So I would do the day miles, and then she would start late in the afternoon, and then she would run into the night. 10 o'clock, I would go to bed, and she'd come to bed whenever she was tired.
Yeah.
And it worked great. And then I'd get up at 7 in the morning and carry on. Yeah. It worked really, really well. Yeah. And we were actually more productive doing it that way than running all the time.
Well, we had a deadline. I wanted to get my master's, go back to school, so we had a deadline. We had to get so much money in order to go through school, you know. So we had to push her like crazy. But it took us from the time we got off the truck to the time I had, pep in my step again, it was 6 months. Yeah. Like I was just like, just bags under my eyes and foggy in the head.
But back in the 80s, in the late 80s, there was a lot of husband and wife teams that they made a 5-year commitment. They're going to run hard for 5 years, and then they had their mind on a business that they wanted to start or take over. Yeah. And so some of them were very, very successful.
Totally.
Yeah. But they had a goal in mind. Yeah. If you don't have a goal in mind, you're kind of all over the map.
Yeah.
So
if it's just a job, that's one thing. But if you've got a goal, you're right.
It's not going to last, because I know so many couples that drove together, and it took less than 5 years, and the wife said, I'm done with this. Yeah. And he's back running single. My wife's been on the truck for 17, 18 years, full time. Yeah. She's taken a few trips off.
I bet you if you would have pushed it too much at the beginning, she probably wouldn't be.
She wouldn't be on the truck anymore. Right. No, that wouldn't work.
No, it's and there's certain rules. I mean, and they'll be different for each married couple, but we never talked about any deep issues at all on the road. It was only business.
Oh,
we never talked about it.
We talk about everything.
Oh, you talk about everything. No, because if all of a sudden I had an opinion and her opinion didn't, whatever, and whatever the opinion was, it could be too quiet for too long, and we could. So we just said, you know what, let's deal with that when we get home, and then whatever. Yeah, okay. So we only had certain topics that we would.
We didn't allow each other to do that. No. If we got into the first year, we did.
Yeah, you maybe
the first year we did, but after that, we did a lot of talking, and like if we're gonna make this work, we got to change a lot of things. Yeah. And so that was one thing. If you're PO, you're not going in the back there. And I wasn't allowed to go. I wasn't allowed to go back there either. Oh, we're going to discuss it. We're not going to yell at each other. We're going to discuss this, and we're going to come to the conclusion.
Sure. Yeah.
And this isn't going to wait. And you know what? I can honestly say, I bet you in the last 12 years or more, we have never had an argument. It's not that we don't have disagreements. We do. Yeah. Right. But we have learned how to work together as a team.
Well, then you still have to slug it out for year after year until you get, okay, now we're both on the same page.
Yeah. But the hardest thing, now we're kind of probably getting off track of what we're talking about.
That's good. Yeah.
But what I found the hardest is, and her too, I was used to sleeping at certain places. I was used to stopping to eat at certain places. I would go to bed at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock, and I could sleep till 7, 8 o'clock. And there's a routine, right? Yeah. I have my favorite spots. Then when she came along, all her comfort zone was gone because she had it at home, right? So now all her comfort zones are gone. She doesn't know my pattern. Yeah. And so now I have to be ripped out of my comfort zone because now I have to change my pattern. So there's a lot of conflict that happens there.
You have to resolve it bit by bit.
And you know what? Until I started talking about that, she didn't know. Right. I didn't say anything. So she's wondering why I'm getting all ticked off at certain things. And so one day we just...
You've done it for so many years.
I laid it out and said, listen, this is where I used to stop and this is what I used to do. And you know what? She said, well, let's stop there. Yeah. And so we made a point of stopping at those places where I used to frequent. And you know what? So there's little things. But if you want to keep a husband-wife deal going, you have to be willing to change.
There was a really good. I was at a coffee shop a while. This is a couple decades ago, and this one guy said a phrase. I've said it many times. That if there would be something like Star Trek that they beamed freight from one place to the other, So it eliminates the need of a truck driver, and all truck drivers came home kind of overnight. 50% of all the marriages would be absolutely fabulous, and 50% of them would be divorces.
It might be more than 50.
Yeah.
Because they're here all the time. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know, and it's a lifestyle that you have to endure.
I talked to a couple just recently, just before Christmas. He's 75 years old, I think, 76, and he had retired already, and then he got called back in because a lot of the drivers left in 2020, in now 2020 and 2022 in February. So a lot of the drivers, so he went back on the road, and she said, "Thank God." She said, "This guy's nothing but a pain in the backside." Like, finally, now I have my space again. And they're 75 plus years old.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Like,
Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
so
There are quite a few husband and wives who are running team. There's actually quite a few of them, and they just want to go to the next level, which is get their own truck. You know, and so there's quite a few. Like I know we have well over 30. I don't keep track of how many, but well over 30 husband and wife teams that are on the road as clients.
wow.
And there's more all the time. Actually, a lot of probably just in the last 6 months, probably 3 or 4 husband and wife teams just say, okay, we've never owned our own before, you know, what do you think of this truck? What do you think of this company or carrier? Or how do we get into it? How do we do it? That kind of thing, you know. And so I go through the process, or, you know, how much do you know about mechanics? How much do you know about miles per gallon and cents per mile and stuff like this, and drill it through. And actually, most of them, after they go through it, they go, "Oh, that's a lot to learn," and they go, "Okay, maybe we'll think about this some more." And about half of them never call back. Maybe.
But once you do get into it, it makes you a professional.
Oh, it makes you professional.
You're running a business. You're running a company.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a lot of fun.
It is fun, and how do I say, a husband and wife team, when they're both collecting non-taxable benefits, well, their taxes just go shoo. If you're running super single, you just don't pay any taxes, you know, or very, very little. Just you're very minimal on there. I've had so many husband-wife teams who are regularly paying $25,000-$30,000 a year in taxes, and then they come here, and then they suddenly only pay 2, 5, 8, or 6, or nothing, or 2. You know, 2 would be nothing, and they can't believe it, and they just they can sock away cash like crazy. But it is an incredible business venture if you can handle it.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we love driving. Like, we just drove this last summer. We drove out to Prince Edward Island, and we were there for a day. We looked around and we said, "Okay, let's drive back."
Oh, my word.
Yeah, we went to see Anne of Green Gables, you know, house. You know, yeah, we seen it. All right, let's go. And we came back again. So, like, there's not really a whole lot to see in Prince Edward. I'm glad we went. I'll probably never go back again.
No.
But because we already seen it. But it was cool going over that bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time we were there, we had to go on the ferry, and it was romantic, and, you know, it was really cool with going there with my wife and stuff like this. But this time we were just driving across. It was nice. So we do love driving. And then we went to North Carolina a couple months ago or so, just driving, just jump in the car, take off, you know, got a little Jetta, you know, take off. We love driving. So
we rode motorcycles for 8 years.
Yeah.
And my wife had her own for 5 years, 6 years maybe. And I remember one trip we were going to do 4 corners. We went stayed on the north side of Minnesota, and then the U.S., and ran down to Ohio, and then into Virginia, West Virginia, and all that. And the one day, I said to my wife, I said, probably the 34th day, I said, "You know what? Why don't we get a motel, and we'll go for supper, and then we'll just go for a walk in the evening?" And she looks at her time, and she says, "It's 5 o'clock." I said, "I'm aware of that." She said, we're burning daylight.
It's a little goal oriented there.
And we drove another 200 miles.
Oh my
Like,
word.
we drove over 500 miles that day on a freaking motorcycle.
Oh, wow.
Like,
It is nice.
we ran 17 states in 16 days.
Oh, yeah.
Oh wow.
I said, we're not trucking, girl.
You better slow down. Did you have mics in your helmets?
No.
It's like you yelled across over. Like,
No, we use sign language.
oh, it's not even
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you know what? There's nothing more rewarding, I think. And you know what? Even our kids, we've been off now for a year, almost a year. And now that we were going to go back on the road, our kids lit up.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I asked my daughter the other day, I said, why are you happy that we're going on the road? I said,
Yeah.
you liked
Yeah.
it when we were at home. And she said, and she just says, you know what? You and Mom get along so well. I'm just envious of you guys.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So we're going to try it again on a different avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
There you go. She's
Another
more excited than I
adventure.
am to go.
yeah. Oh no, that's good. Well, that's right. Because I think when it comes if things financially get tight in our society more and more, everything from inflation, higher taxes, because higher taxes are coming too. Yes, they bumped up interest rate, but the next round is we got to deal with these deficits, so we have to jack up taxes. And so they're going to focus on it. It may not be in 2023, but probably 2024, 2025. There's something they're either going to, they have to cut spending like crazy, which very few governments
They're
ever
not
actually
going
do,
to.
you know, or they're going to increase taxes or something like that. And if people are going to get discouraged or something, there's going to be more and more people who, husband, wife team says, you know what, let's just get out on the road. And,
If the freight is there.
yeah, if the freight is there.
yeah.
Now, oh, that's right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the freight rates. We were talking before, you know, February to May, the outstanding freight rates that was going, and then it started coming down. One of the reasons why, for instance, that one client that had bought it for $150 and then he, 2 years later sold it for $180. The reason why it's a supply chain, yes, but also everybody was making big money in the trucking, and they just needed power. And I don't care what I pay for a truck as long as it drives, you know, and that's why the price for these trucks just went through the roof. Well, the semiconductors, I don't know if anybody, somebody can maybe correct me at least a little bit on it, but the semiconductor industry, because it was disrupted by COVID and so, and the big problem was overseas semiconductors versus domestic. There really wasn't a whole lot of domestic before COVID. But when COVID came on, and they did a huge build down the States, can't remember where the place or whatever, but also so the capacity of semiconductors just went way up high. Now, I was under the understanding when somebody was talking to me, you know, because of all these semiconductors, you know, what's going to happen is, you know, are these prices going to continue? And I said, it'll probably continue for quite a while, because if I owned a semiconductor industry, well, I wouldn't come in there, flood the market and bring the prices right down. I would just slowly bleed in and get the highest margin I could for it, you know. But I think to a certain degree what's happening is, as the North American market brings semiconductors in, the overseas market doesn't want to lose their market, so they cut their price, and now you got a price war.
Yeah.
And so we could very well be flooded with semiconductors over the next number of years, because now there's a price war, domestic versus overseas. And so I never would have guessed that, but I mean, that's why I'm not in that industry or whatever. But I mean, there's so many things up and down. But now we have the freight rates down. Now we're talking quite significantly low freight rates. Now, there's been a few articles and people talk about because of the February to May outrageous freight rates, people saw those freight rates, guys who were owner-operators seeing and say, I'm going to get my blasted running rights. So they go out and they get their own running rights. A humongous amount of not a humongous, but a substantially more amount of carriers came into the market in February, March, April, May, June, July, even, and when freight rates started to go down in June and July, a lot of them didn't think it was sustained. It's going to come back up or so, and it didn't. But they kept on buying trucks even after that, and so that whole dynamic of really high freight rates causing overpricing of trucks, that pretty much stopped November, December, maybe in there. Though you can still find some
September. It started going down in September.
Yeah, it started to go, but I mean, it really, like you didn't see any of that even sometimes in October already. The guy that got 180 for it, he got it in August. And I think he was like probably the last little bit of it, in there. But now what's going to happen is you're in the industry, you have either small carriers or carriers who have grossly overpaid for trucks, and something that they paid $180,000 for, and in a year, that $180,000 purchase is going to only be worth maybe $100,000,
if that.
And so they've lost $80,000 on one piece of equipment, so they're going to lose on their books massive. They're not and then the freight rate's going down yet too. So you're going to see some spiking of people's bankruptcies and carrier bankruptcies and all sorts of things going.
But even the
through.
loss of drivers, there's been so many companies that have lost like a third or more of their fleet.
Yeah, it's we lost only about it would be about 10-11% of our clients.
That's still big.
And I'd say probably about a third of them, they had no intention of quitting, but somebody offered them an obscene amount of money for their trucks. Yeah.
And there's your retirement money.
Or I said, you know what? See you in 2 years.
Yeah.
When the truck prices come down again, which it will come down again, or at least moderately, somewhat, in there. So there's a lot of ups and downs in there. Now I did want to touch, and we were before this program, we were talking about if you choose a carrier and you're on at a percentage, running at a percentage, you are a little bit married to their freights, their customer base, their lanes and loops and stuff like this. And you have to accept that and or develop your own within that company in there. And that is that requires a certain amount of finesse. You have to work with the carrier and say, okay, I'm not going over there anymore. Because it's not, I want to go here and let's find this and go in this. And so you have to be more aggressive. And there's some people who just want to drive, and they don't want to interact with the industry or the market that much. And they just say, well, just tell me where to go.
See, but even you having said that, I thought about this earlier and forgot about it. But also the customers, like, let's say a smaller company, they will have specific customers. It is very, very important for the driver or the owner operator to treat those customers with utmost respect. They may never see your dispatcher, but they will see you every week. So if they like you, they will say, hey, wait a minute. There's like a number of guys that have come in here. These they're awesome guys.
I want this guy.
You know what? And they'll pay more for freight because of this company, and they're reliable. They're respectful.
That's how a driver creates their value.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
By propping up the company that they work for.
Not bragging on myself, but we've had lots of customers that actually phoned our company and said, "Hey, send this couple down with the next load." Well. And they can't guarantee that, but why do they ask that?
Ultimately, that's what us as a truck driver should be doing. That's part of our job. The company is looking for freight. Our job is to supply that part of the industry. if it's just a trailer that shows up and then a trailer that leaves, that there's really not a incentive to call that company for another load. We're a smaller company, so we interact with the companies that we haul for, and we've been underbid a few times. And the reliability and just the camaraderie was not there, and they decided, the company decided, we're going to go back to us to haul the freight, because when they knew who they were calling.
Yep.
It was and it was a familiar person to talk to. We were consistent. When we be there, we were there exactly when we told them we'd be there. Not just, oh yeah, we had a flat tire. Oh no, this time it was this. You know, everybody's got an excuse. But when there's less excuses, then
we want to solve their problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a problem. We want to solve it and not create another one. Not
you have 8 seconds from when a customer sees you. You have 8 seconds to impress that customer. They will make up their mind within those 8 seconds if they like you or not, or if they like the company or not. Coming in there with a dirty truck all the time, dirty, like all your stuff is dirty, like, okay. You know, it's maybe it's just me. I like to come into a customer's place and have my truck clean, and it's you know, everything's working.
You know, on national averages, approximately 50% of all truck drivers out there are only driving for a paycheck, and they are looking desperately for something to come off the road. There's only 50% that are really they enjoy and they're committed to the industry, and those are the ones who build a great carrier and company. I was thinking about this the other day, just from a mathematical perspective. What is the most valuable thing in a trucking company? And the first thing has to be the driver, and the second thing then has to be the truck that it's in, and it's primarily because it's the highest value. That if that thing stops, everybody stops.
Yeah.
Nothing goes on. If a dispatcher gets hit by a trailer or something like that, the freight is still moving. You know, at least for a while, you can do it. But when a truck stops. When a driver stops, I mean, they are the culture of the company. If you want to know whether a carrier is doing well or not, take a look at the morale of all of the people there. Talk to some of the people who've left, or even guys who've been there for 3 or 4 months, and say, okay, what was your expectations? What are you experiencing? You know, there's and people who've been there for many years.
Well, there's always a core, right?
Yeah.
And I always find when I see the core begin to leave, there's a deep problem.
Yeah.
Not retire, but actually leave.
Correct.
Yeah. I've seen
that goes somewhere else. Now there's a deep problem. What am I missing?
That's very much like what you were saying before, where the carrier has his favorites.
Yep.
Because and he will grow that. He will grow the company only as his favorites grow.
Yes.
You know, he can't grow just because there's more truckers. You know, more trucks. It's the favorites. It's the reliables that create the
something
actual
you can depend on, and that's
carrier.
a business model. Like
Totally.
you have to sell dependability.
Yeah.
That's
Reliability. It's. There are different carriers in the market. For instance, if it's a huge carrier, and that huge carrier is looking just to move freight on a mass scale, their level of service is this is our minimal, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really make any difference whether the person has his heart into it or not. I mean, it's just pin to pin or whatever it is. Yeah. There's no passion. But when there's a lot of the market actually requires attention. I mean, the word that's overused a lot is in the industry is logistics. Everybody says logistics, but realistically, there is an actual job to logistics. Is moving freight, storing freight, and keeping track. You're taking on responsibility of a customer at a phenomenal level that you don't see on the branch. But everybody uses the words logistics way too much.
Yeah.
But realistically, a logistics company is taking over a huge responsibility for somebody, and if you're taking over you need people, you need manpower that actually takes care.
Yeah.
You can't just have a body.
Yeah, no, without
you
the
can't just have a
manpower,
body
Because,
there.
because driving truck is not just steering and gearing and not hitting someone.
Yeah.
You are taking on the responsibility and liability of whatever's on the back, because there's lots of construction stuff that I've hauled, and it's almost like a just on time type thing. We get it there. We've been needing this, and you have the opportunity to chain it down, put it exactly how they want it on the trailer. It's secured. You get it to the job site, and they're taking it off. Oh, this is great. You can just see them. They're
happy on both ends.
They're happy on both ends,
As opposed to mad on both ends.
yeah, and for me, that's awesome. Because years ago, when I was younger, I was in the construction industry. So you see, I'm familiar with building, and now it's on a much larger. Like, I'm finding places in Winnipeg. I had no idea they were building this kind of thing in Winnipeg. What? Winnipeg?
No.
It's just and then Toronto and Ontario, Ottawa, and all over the place. Like, it's amazing what's going on in Canada.
Yeah.
Especially we get to be there and see it. Oh, wow, cool. I delivered some elevator parts right downtown Montreal, and I Googled, and was I concerned how to get in there. Because there's just little one-way streets this way, and I get in there, and I had to. They had one road blocked off, and I came in there, and then I had to back up down the alley, and then I had to make a 90-degree corner at the back of the alley to go. Luckily, it was turning to the driver's side.
Yeah, not blindsided.
No, it wasn't blindside. But they had 4 guys there. And as soon as I was watching in the mirrors, and they were making sure I had maybe 5 feet on both sides. So I didn't know how I was going to make that corner in the back. And I felt, okay, I've got to start turning pretty soon. And I was looking in the mirror, and the guy in the back goes like this. He knows exactly where my tires have to go and when they have to turn. And all of a sudden, that backup job became extremely comfortable because I had 2 guys in the front, 2 in the back. They knew what they were doing. I started pulling I pulled the straps and tarps off, and they were joking and having a great time. I had to wait a little longer than I wanted to unload, but these guys were happy to get their product. Yeah. It was a breeze to work with them, and I'll never see them again. But it was, it's a memorable thing for me because I was able to provide this amazing service. Well, I felt it was a wonderful service, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
but
there's an element of pride to it too.
It is, yes, yeah.
It absolutely
doing
is.
a good job. Maybe the older we get, the more valuable it becomes to us.
Well, the golden rule, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Do unto others what you want them to do to you.
Yeah.
Treat them the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. So is it a good time to start being an independent operator? That, I guess, is up to you. And everybody takes on their own amount of risk that they feel comfortable with, responsibility, liability. Caution, don't take on blind risk, blind trust. Do a little more research. This is years of your life that you are investing in.
Ask a lot of questions.
Ask as many questions as you possibly can, and see how much respect that flows around the company between individuals. And don't rush into something. There's no reason to rush at all into being an independent operator. The best decisions are the ones that you see the opportunity, and you take advantage. Maybe you buy the truck first and then just wait for a few months or something like that before you do it, if you have to, kind of a thing. But if you feel too much pressure, back off. And the best business decisions I've ever made in my life are the ones I said no to. Because I looked about them after the other people who said yes, well, they lost everything, And realistically, take your time. You're in a business. This is a serious business, serious money, and if you don't want to take the risk, then don't sign a personal guarantee for any truck.
Yeah.
You just test it out with a carrier lease. Walk away. Make sure it's a walk away carrier lease, and just get the feel of it from there. But other than that,
find seniors that are still in the industry. Not me, older guys.
You got enough.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in New Lisbon one day at the TA truck stop, and I never sit on the horseshoe bar, but this time I did. And there's an old guy sitting over here, and I was sitting here, and there's a young guy over there, and he's just ratchet trying. I mean, this guy knew everything, and he knew how to work the DOT and everything like that. And I'm watching the old guy, and I'm listening to the young guy, and I'm thinking, what kind of an idiot is this? And I'm watching the old guy, and he's just sitting there eating his food, doesn't even lift up his head. And all of a sudden, he knows that I'm looking at him, and he looks up at me, and this kid's just going, and he says, they do get quiet after a while.
some of them do.
Right?
I've known some in the 70s are
But you know
just
what?
on in. No,
But you know what?
You're right.
That incident right there changed my view of a lot of things. I thought about that scenario. And you know what? I started finding myself, and I was just a young operator at the time, but I started finding these guys that had nice trucks. They're old guys. But you know what? These guys have been around the block. And so you ask them questions, and they'll tell you.
The wise ones want to give advice.
Correct.
You
If you say arrogant right away, walk away.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah. But
You don't want the know-it-alls.
no, because they generally don't.
But it is a great industry.
It is.
I've been in it for 37 years. I have loved every trip.
Yeah.
Every trip.
Yeah. For sure.
I've not always liked where I went, but I like every trip.
Yeah.
And now I'm really looking forward to my new adventure.
Sure. Right on.
Getting older sucks.
No, it doesn't.
I've done more challenging trips in the last 2 years than I have out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And one has been right downtown Toronto, like in a major construction, right downtown Montreal, right on the by the docks in Vancouver, like really, and it's not just a long ways away from home.
Yeah.
It's when you get there, you've got maybe a foot and a half on either side and millions of dollars on either side, and you've got maybe $500,000 worth of product on the back of your truck. You screw up, and that's my check. It has nothing to do with the company I work for. It's my liability. You're on pins and needles. But when it's done, you walk away and oh my word, this is.
Well, I'll talk to you in 2 years from now. Then all my hair will be great.
I think when you're talking about backing up like that, when I was driving, the worst place I've ever tried to back up was in actually downtown Winnipeg when the post office. Have you ever been in there?
We were inside.
Yeah,
up on the second floor
on
with a 53-footer.
With a 53-footer, we tried that. We were doing it. I backed up. I don't know. Must have been 15, 18 times trying to get that. You only have a margin of 6 inches or something like that, and and after a while, because you only have a few, maybe a minute or something like that before more trucks come through or whatever, and you got to pull out and start again and stuff. I did that so many times.
But they stage them so that if they don't stage them right, you can't get out of there. There's no way you can't get a car in front of your truck once you're in the dock.
And it's all in the building, and you got these big beams.
There's one way out. One way in, one way out.
Yeah. And I was young, I was young, and I like I said, I 15, 18 times, I lost track of it, and in the end, when I got it in there, and I said, I don't care how bad somebody ever parks,
Mm-hmm.
I'll never make fun of them. Because sometimes it just there's something in there that is an optical illusion a little bit too. It's because of how the roof kind of slants or something like that, and it gives you it's a different. You
Well,
gotta
I've backed into places, and it's a zigzag this way, and then the dock is a little bit of an angle. I've gone backwards, look in my mirrors, and nail it 100%. And the guys come out and say, "I have never seen someone back like that." And I go, "Hold it." I know I'm good. I know I'm good. I have done this a while, but this is an anomaly. I'm just as proud of this as you are as impressed. Right? So, and then there's other places where I've gone wide open field and the dock is at a 18-degree angle, and it takes me half an hour to figure out how to nail that. Like, you've got half an acre of wide open space and you can't get 18 degrees. It just like,
The tighter it is, the easier it is.
yeah. And you know, and
You got
and then
you got something to line up to.
There's people that are having difficulty backing, and I'm going, oh yeah, but when you watch them, there's a lot of times you can tell whether it's inexperience or it's a difficult procedure, you know, and I don't like getting into the, oh, he's not a good driver or this or that. Like it comes back to bite you so quick.
Keep a good attitude.
Yeah.
That's so much.
Sure.
There was one place in Edmonton. This was last year. It was a new driver, and he had a hard time getting the angle because it was not a straight on dock. It was an off angle, and there was nothing to line up with. It was just two little points.
No paint lines or anything?
Nothing at all. And he probably spent 12, 15 minutes, and there was a lot of traffic. Finally, one of the local drivers said, "Can I help you?" He got in there, backed it up, nailed it right away. And you know what? It's just the way we have to do it. There's so many new people coming in the industry. We have to have. It's about our customers. You know, they were getting frustrated already.
I have in over 30 years only helped one person back in.
Yeah.
I never had the guts to go and ask if I could help. I have been outside and helped them that way, but to get in the seat,
Right.
only once.
Okay.
And that was just dumb luck. She had tried already for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
The receiver was so angry. And I'm waiting because my appointment was in 15 minutes from now. And she'd been already trying to do this for 45 minutes. And so I brought my paperwork in and are you the guy that's trying to back in there? I said, no, sir. My appointment's in 15 minutes. And I said, do you want me to help that person back the truck? Would you please? And so I went and asked if I could help. Absolutely, that person into the other seat. And I said, okay. I said, I'll show you. I said, just watch. And so I pulled the truck right out. And I backed that stupid thing in there the first shot. I'm straight. And I dynamited the brakes. And she said, how did you do that? I said, beginner's luck.
Beginner's luck. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There's only one industry that is way above my pay grade, and that's backing up Super Bs or trains. Ooh, that is
I've different.
I'll salute those guys.
Totally. They are on a different planet.
It's amazing.
Yep.
Some of the competitions that are out there, it's almost like they're driving forward, and then you put the camera in reverse, and they do it perfectly. You know, it is just it's a double negative, and I have a double negative on English. Never mind in backing trailers or anything like that. So. But some of the stuff is just amazing that can be done. Most guys, I mean, like LCVs or something like that, they just drive and they park it.
Yeah, well, you can't back that up.
You can't back it. So, but the guys with Super Bs, man, my hats go off. And you don't just jump into that industry right away.
But even if you want to get into the industry, you have to think long term.
Yeah.
Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to try it." No, that's the wrong attitude.
No.
Go in there
like Yoda say, you either do or don't do.
Yeah, well, that's like the dispatcher told me today. He said, hey, if you would do it for 3 months and you don't like it, he says, no, I won't be offended if you leave. I
Right.
said, I'm not going in here with a quitter attitude.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going in here to win.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
retirement.
If you
Yeah.
want to try the industry, that's a good place to go hire on with a company
Yep.
and just turn
Yep.
the steering wheel.
Yep.
You know what? That is the very minimum that you'll be required to do. If you want to take on the debt, the responsibility, the liabilities, that's step 2, 3, 4
It
down
requires
the
a
road.
different skill set.
Yes.
Yes.
Some people
Yeah.
I've talked to have zero understanding of, like I was talking to one guy once, and I was talking about non-taxable benefits, and I said one of the negatives, but is reversible, is you have to be very strategic in terms of borrowing for a house and anything at the financing level. Well, he just stood up right and he says, if I can't borrow all the money that I want at the bank, then I don't want to do this. His mindset was, you succeed when you borrow everything from the bank. And I thought, okay, well, you got maybe 18 months, and then you're going to be insolvent anyway. So, so you really want to. You have to. Your view is, when are you going to have the truck paid for, and when can you start socking away for retirement, paying down your personal house, that kind of thing. Those are the goals that you want, and it's all achievable. It can be done. And some people, you would be probably more difficult than you if you would have to start right from scratch. You would probably get there twice as fast as you, because you're a single driver and you're a team driver. And so but everybody, there's no such thing as equal. We're not all going to have the exact same thing at the end. It's not equal outcome. It's you have the same opportunity. You just apply yourself differently. And you'll have different results, but you have to be happy with whatever results it is, and so that you can be okay. Don't compare yourself to other people.
Nope,
that
never,
is
never.
brutally. Envy is the starting stone of
your
downward slope.
personal skill set. And just steering a truck isn't necessarily the best skill set. That's dumbing it down to the minimum.
You guys are both exceptional operators, and the like. Neither one of you got into owning multiple trucks.
No.
Because you didn't want to work with other truck drivers?
No.
Yes.
No, not for me anyway. I watched these guys again. They started 5 years or so after I got into the owner-operator. They would do that for a few years, and then they would either 2 trucks had to pay for the other 3, or one had to pay for 2, and it was just going down and down and down, and then they got rid of them. And I saw that time and time again.
That is very.
There was a point where I actually did think about keeping one of my trucks that I had, or I had 2.
You had to.
Yeah, I had 2, and putting a driver on it. And my wife said no. If you want to go broke, then do that. But if you want to succeed, then leave it alone. And so we never got into that. So and I look at a person that we know very well. They had 8 trucks, and they are in worse shape today than we are.
Sure.
Way worse shape.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, even for
9
me,
out of 10 fail.
Right.
9 out of 10 fail.
Yep.
even for me, like
May take a 2 or 3 years, but they 9 out of 10.
There was lots of opportunity where I had drivers driving my truck. I was very tired, so I'd hire a driver, and they'd do a couple loads for me, and that was all fine and good. The only problem was, if something went wrong, all those margins came out of my pocket. And then I started looking at it and saying, okay, well, how did that succeed for me? Because I could have 10 good driven trips, and then 1 go bad, and then all those 10 are used to cover up the 1 that went bad. So my liabilities are so high when I'm at home. all I'm doing there is sitting. I'm hoping they're not screwing up. I'm hoping something's not going wrong. You know, that your uncomfort level. Some people can deal with that stress a little easier. I didn't deal with that. I felt more comfortable if my truck was not running, it was parked, and it wasn't screwing up, or something wasn't getting broken, or this or that. So
you weren't going into a worse situation. Yeah,
that's right. Yes. Yeah, we could have pushed harder. I know I have friends who had put several trucks on, and it went bigger, and then it collapsed down. He's got 2 now, just barely going. You know, yeah, you can, but you've got to deal with other people who are expecting a lot and not wanting to do much.
And you don't know how they're operating the equipment.
That's correct. Yes.
You don't know until 6 to 9 months later.
Yeah, when you pay the next maintenance bill, you're going, he did what? That it's not supposed to wear out that quick.
I only hired a driver twice. The second time they asked me, but I broke my knee, so I was off for 3 months, and so I had a driver on it, and that didn't turn out quite the way I thought it would. And then the second time we were on holidays we went away for a month, and I had a couple drive my truck, and I made more money than if I would have been at home myself. So that was you know what, when I got the truck back, the truck looked exactly the same as I had left it, but they had put on like 15,000 miles.
Oh yeah. Wow. Do they own their own now?
They had 5-6 trucks of their own as well.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but they were retired.
Oh yeah.
And so
they knew what they were doing.
They liked my truck, and they found out that I was going on holidays and said, "Hey, if you need a driver, so let us run." And those people ran like crazy.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, those are rare.
They are rare.
Yeah, if you got the pool of just Kijiji ad in the paper or whatever, you're going to get anybody off the street. Oh my word! You have no idea the length of headaches that you can have. Sometimes even family members. Some of the most I've had lawsuits against cousins and in-laws and stuff like this. It seems like they don't even have a conscience. They don't even know what they're doing. So you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah. And they're unemployed generally for a reason.
I would say if you won $100 million and you always wanted to build a trucking company, that's a good time. But but other than that,
you'll have lots of tax write-offs.
Correct. Lots of tax write-offs?
Yeah.
That would take forever to build up a big company, even if you had the cash, because you would have to buy the equipment to get the. You would have to buy a company and then expand. You can't start right from scratch or whatever.
You'd have to buy yourself into trucking lanes that are really snapped up. And that would be tough.
That would be very tough. The biggest I've seen, we've had some clients come through here and actually go out and get their own running rights and then build. And there's some of them. Biggest one I think is something like 60 trucks or something like that. Ooh. And they're actually pretty good in there. But they were math nerds coming in from day one. And they, these guys, get 3-4 hours of sleep a night, and driven like crazy, focused on everything from soup to nuts. And I could see myself doing that when I'm, 25, 35, something like that. And which that actually, now that I think about it, that's the age they were. And but they were hard drivers themselves, not just drivers of the truck, but they drove people
internally
and created a very high standard, and they're successful.
But then you can already hire your own mechanics, and so you can see where your trucks are at.
Yeah, so. But even then, a lot of it was done on debt, and I'm not sure whether they're going to weather this recession that we're in the middle of a recession. Nobody knows it yet, but when the trucking rates go down. We're in a recession. That it's the first indicator of a recession. Not people know that, but we are in a recession. So you put these kind of freight rates for another 6 months or a year. Where are they going to be at? How many trucks are they going to have? How many employees are they going to have? Are they even going to be solvent? The majority of independent operators who get into the industry are grossly over leveraged. They get in. Yeah. And they just scrape every penny they can for their down payment, and they have zero margin. The first margin, they don't have anything in savings when they get out on the road for the first day. And
then all you have to do is blow a tire, and that makes it.
You just go from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis, and
it's just to blow a tire on the road. You're looking at $1,200 at least.
At least, or more, depends. Job,
depending on where it is.
Mm-hmm.
I know I blew a tire a couple years ago. I blew a steer tire just outside of Regina, but it was at night, so it had to be a service call.
Mm-hmm.
And the steer tire, it blew and it dropped and wrecked the rim. So it had to rim and tire and a service job.
Well, that's probably closer to 2.
Well, no, it was between 12 and 1,500.
Pretty bad.
Like if you're running your margins very tight,
a
blown tire can ruin your month.
Yeah. I remember the first truck that I owned. I'm paranoid of debt, so every spare penny I just threw it in towards debt. I had that truck paid for in like about 8 months. Okay, we just gave her like crazy. It was ridiculous. Didn't pay a huge amount, but I mean. It was pretty ridiculous, but then all of a sudden I didn't. It right around the 6th or 7th month or something like that. An alternator went, and this is 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and it cost me something like $300 or something like that. What in the world? I thought the world had come to an end. $300. Who pays $300 for an alternator? And I was at home at the time, and everything, whatever. And suddenly I realized I had no maintenance account. I had nothing. Everything went to debt, Yeah. And did I learn fast? I said, I think I should have a maintenance account.
Yeah. And
I learned the hard way.
There are certain things that will leave you sticking on the side of the road, like an alternator.
Yeah.
Have a spare one.
Mm-hmm.
Have spare air-to-air boots.
Yeah.
The blue ones or the orange ones.
Oh, yeah.
Have spare of those. I blew one coming up the Chattanooga Hill. The one day, it just sounded like a shotgun went off.
Mm-hmm.
My wife said, "What the heck was that?" Well, I said, I know what that was. I just pulled over on the side of the road, and I started getting stuff. She said, "Well, what was it?" I said, "The air boot blew." Now what? Well, I said, "I got a spare one in the cubbyhole."
Mm-hmm.
Put a new one on it. We were there for like 15 minutes. If that,
goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And we went again. So there are certain things that leave you sticking that you're not gonna get far if you've got a heavy load on.
Yeah.
And especially something like that, it'll overheat your engine like crazy and fast.
Fast. All right. Man, awesome. This is good. We got to do this again sometime.
Oh, we could do this for hours.
Oh, yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when is it a good time to start being an independent operator? Well,
right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Right now or not at all. One of the two.
I would never, ever discourage somebody from getting into the industry.
No.
I never have and I never will.
Yeah.
But be wise about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Get wisdom, knowledge. Understand the industry that you're getting
Knowledge
into.
is free. Wisdom is priceless.
You betcha. All right. Have a great trip.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.